Like throughout all history, this coronavirus pandemic affects the poorest and most needy members of our society first and hardest. It has ripped through nursing homes and crowded public housing estates. Now, we are a kind, compassionate society. We will survive this crisis. In fact, it gives us a real opportunity to elicit lasting social change, a chance to wipe the slate clean and start again. From health issues to money issues, it all begins with more new, affordable public housing. This public housing area could be anywhere in the world, but it is actually in Sydney's far west. On the surface, it looks like paradise. Everybody would want to live in a place like this, but this is where the forgotten people are placed. This is public housing area. It's where people are moved to whether they like it or not. Now, what governments do is provide a minimum amount of money so that people in this area can exist. That's what they do, they exist in these places. We're heading out to St Mary's to look at the areas where the housing commissions in the 50s, which actually saved many families. I can remember families around St Mary's living in the bush, in the Hessian humpies, with tin roofs, living in old cow barns, and slowly creeping over the hillsides came the housing commission houses.
Continue straight to stay onto Brinkett Avenue, then turn left onto Glossop Street.
I grew up seeing the line of houses looming towards me, growing over the hill. These were the housing commission places that were built of fibro. Of course, a lot of these have been done up now, but you get the picture. You can just imagine like a sea of houses coming across the hill and closer. There's a few that you can kind of see back from their original thing, but many of them have been sold off to the original tenants. Here's a couple, here's one of the originals, all fibro. They came and they were mainly painted green, but they were fibro and they were adequate housing for people. And people basically moved out from sleeping under the trees into this sort of accommodation. Now, we could do that in the 1950s. Look at it, decent, affordable public housing. We could do that in the 1950s. There are no excuses why we can't do it again now. Here we are in the inner city Sydney suburb of Glee. Now, what we can see out there is the 60s approach to public housing. And what they did was they put all the homeless people and all those who needed housing into big apartments like these, which ultimately just become slums. And that's the saddest thing. You can't put people in the depths of despair all living with one another. They need to be living in normal society and part of normal society. Like, no excuses now. That's what people need, to be part of normal society. We are looking for a modern approach to housing people, a modern approach to cheap, affordable public housing. It's somewhere in this estate around here because so many of the people, I think it's 1 in 6 of these apartments, is affordable public housing. Now, this is a great idea. 1 in 6 is affordable public housing. However, what begins to happen is that the people who get these units are further up the food chain. They're people like the fireys and the nurses, and they need public housing. They need cheap, affordable public housing. The people who are on lower incomes who make the city run and survive. However, what gets lost are the homeless who are at the bottom of this. And these are the people who are the single mum escaping domestic violence, the person who's been unemployed for so long that they've become chronically unemployed. Those sorts of people have nowhere to go, and what we kind of need now is a special emphasis on those, so that as well as the people who need cheap, affordable public housing get it in order for the city to survive, we actually now need cheap, affordable public housing for those people who are at the bottom of the food chain who need it to survive themselves.